What's up, guys, and welcome to The Reload. I'm Cody Luongo, and today we have a stacked show for you. We're talking Counter-Strike, specifically the Dreamhack Masters event in Stockholm, Sweden, happening next week. And without further ado, let's go ahead and just bring in our guests. First up to bat, my colleague at Esports Insider. He is a editor at the North American CSGO news source dusT to Us, and also UK Esports Award Journalist of the Year, my man Michael Duck. What is going on, pal?
Not bad. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, man. It's nice to meet you. I feel like this is like an introduction to us as much as it is to the people watching.
Feels like it, yeah.
Yeah, man. That's cool. I'm happy you decided to come on board and talk some CS today. Are you excited?
Yeah, fairly excited. It's been a while since I've done something like this, and got lots of words to say, so that'll be exciting.
Words are great. It's a podcast, so
Yeah.
we love words. Words are, can never get enough words. And go ahead and queue up our next guest. He is an ex-professional American Counter-Strike player, ex-coach of Counter-Logic Gaming Red. I see him getting hype in the program out. He's boasting almost 15 years of Counter-Strike experience. He is a... Fuck. Can we start that?
Oh,
No, you keep that, baby. That's how I
Can we just
intro,
roll with that?
right?
Let's roll with
That's
it. We
how I
got the
intro.
Bears.
You don't have to do it. You don't have to throw in CLG Red. You don't have to throw in all that stuff. I've been in the game for a long time, and I'm not going anywhere, baby. Let's go. And I'm excited. Yes, I'm gonna answer your question before you say it to me. I am excited.
I love that enthusiasm. I love it. I mean, off the bat, I gotta say, I feel a little outnumbered. We got a duck. We got a bear. I feel like I need a spirit animal here. I want one.
You do need one. Everyone needs a spirit animal.
the duck is obviously the most dangerous animal.
We come from atoms that are
That's
made
true.
from animals.
True say. Well, let's get our last guest in here. Last but not least, American Counter-Strike analyst. He is a commentator, writer, and content creator of all sorts. He has served as an analyst for ELEAGUE, Gfinity, Dreamhack, and ECS events. dusT, what is going on, pal?
What is going on, my friend? How's it going?
It's going great, man.
Hold on, can I address something really quick?
Let's address
Energy,
it.
Can you hook the Bears up with a new headset? What is that mic, dog? Just rip it off. Rip it off.
Still waiting for my sponsored headset. I can't really show it is,
right.
but yes, the microphone's dangling. There was tape on it before, but I don't have tape in this house, so it's just what it is. What it is, man. Around here, we just let it hang out. Okay, we just let it hang out.
Does it
That's how
still
it
work?
goes.
Got it. I mean, we can hear them, so I guess.
Oh, I got a
Success.
different microphone. There you go.
Just rip
that's,
that mic off then.
I can't. Because it might mess with the headset. I don't know these things. I want to mess.
This is
Accept
gangster
it,
style.
all right? I accept you.
All
You
right.
accept this. Okay, that's just how it goes.
All right. I'll let it go.
Bears rolling in like a gangster, straight up.
I'm excited.
So first
Coffee,
off,
baby.
before we get into anything, I teased you guys coming onto the show last night. I don't know if you saw it. Let's go ahead and bring that tweet up right now. Had 3 hints for who our guests were for this show. I thought it was pretty clever, to be honest.
I like that, Bear. I like that.
Got a bear.
It's very vicious.
I
Kind of. What is that in the bottom right? Is that
That's
supposed to be
dust.
Smoke?
I guess
Is
it's
that smoke?
dust, man. A dust cloud. There's
Dust.
really not a whole lot of
Picture.
epic photos you can use to hint me, I guess. I mean, it looks all right. It could have been worse.
That was the
There you
best
go.
we got. It was that or just like a
I mean,
pile.
I can't blame
I would
you
have
on
guessed
that.
clouds.
There's really not a
but,
whole lot there.
I've been wrong.
Right on. Well, today we get to talk Counter-Strike, so it's a good day. We got the Dreamhack Masters Stockholm coming up. It's a $250,000 tournament and part of the Intel Grand Slam happening next week, 29th to September 2nd. Let's go ahead and bring up the groups right now, take a look at those. What do you guys' first impressions on that lineup?
This is a pretty stacked event for being, right before the major. I'm excited to see, what the Astralis and, Navi and all of them kind of bring to the table. But it's also take a look at the smaller teams. You see North coming up, Heroic. I don't have much faith in Heroic, but you never know. Maybe they boot camp really well. Anyone can win. That's what I love about CS.
Yeah, I mean, I think
I
the
ju-
groups are nice in the sense that when you look at them, you feel like there's probably 2 pretty clear favorites to come out the group and like one team that has a chance to kind of upset and get second seed. I guess the only group that looks a little bit weaker than the rest is probably Group D. It doesn't seem as stacked as maybe the other 3 groups, but still a couple of good teams involved. And like MIBR is kind of a mystery right now, so they could show up and be excellent. So yeah, with that said, I think it's nice that we had like a pretty, I guess, decent distribution of the teams across the groups.
There's just like certain groups there which make me look at it and go like, how's that been seeded? If you look at Group B, all the North American teams are in that group. Group C is pretty much just all Nordic teams. I'm like, just spread the love a bit, you know? Just don't.
I agree with that. I think you're right on that.
Yeah.
Why put 2 Americans in the same one? You know?
Yeah.
Just
Don't let
I want
Ghost
2
get
teams.
bodied by Na'Vi in Group B. Come on. Yeah.
Right. I definitely think Group B is going to be probably the
A
most.
bloodbath.
Yeah, that's probably going to be the tightest running in terms of who makes it out of there, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, you got Ghost, who's kind of, I think they just added Crystal to the team. So that's a
Yes.
very controversial, interesting pick. A lot of people didn't expect that one to come out, but Ghost, they've been making their way up, you know, from being an amateur team to, well, I guess they were a pro team, but they keep changing up their roster all the time. It's hard to actually keep track of them and see, you know, if they're going to be good, are they going to be consistent, can they even go to majors? Probably not because of Steel, but they do have a lot of potential, and I think that with Steel leading them, or is it going to be is he still in IGLing for Ghost? You guys
Yes,
know,
still
or is it going to be
he
Crystal?
definitely is.
Right,
The only
I don't know if
disappointing
they-
thing, I guess, is that Liquid won't be here. Like, that's the one team that is kind of missing.
Yeah.
That's, you know, top 5 team in the world off of like a really good ELEAGUE Premier event where they took second to Astralis. And so it would have been nice to see if they could have like continued off of that with some momentum and done something in Stockholm. But unfortunately, they won't be here. But hey, that's what the major's for coming up next, right? It's just to see all the top teams at it. But still an incredibly stacked lineup for Stockholm.
Right, and Liquid had just seemed like they had finally started to find their footing at that last event. Right, and
Yeah,
even
really did seem
though
that
they got
way.
mopped by Astralis, you know, they took out Mass Sports, and just like making it into to the grand finals was still pretty legit in my opinion.
Yeah, I think Team Liquid, they've always, in America, we've always expected them to be the next team, but they always kind of stuck at second place, you know, whether it's behind C9 or whatnot. And now with NRG coming up, obviously Team Liquid is right now the #1 team to beat, but as far as potential and power, I think Energy might have the edge on them, because one thing that Team Liquid doesn't have, that Energy has, is a great opper. I know that Nitro does op sometimes, and he can have good games, but he's not a playmaker like Cirque is. And I think Cirque is just a huge part of Energy, that I think Energy could be the team to rival Team Liquid maybe in this next 6 months. You know, we'll see on that.
You're not just being biased, Bears.
You know, and I know I'm wearing the hat, part of the organization, but before I joined them, I was a big fan of them because I like seeing new talent and just new people coming up, and I think Energy is a pretty good team. You know, not just of Cirque, but they have good strats and teamwork and stuff, and I think that's why they showed a little consistency throughout this last year.
Well, there you go. You feel your contract obligation there to Bears for Energy on the show that we're able to give
It's
you
all
that
set.
time.
Commitments
There you go.
fulfilled.
I mean, we can't mention NRG without mentioning the fact that they had a pretty unfortunate minor appearance, it's safe to say.
Oh, yeah.
Recently.
They choked hard, and that's one thing about Energy, is that in the past they're a young team, and so sometimes they ride the momentum a little too hard, and when they get to, I guess, when it's a high tense situation, it's a little iffy for them, and that's where experience will hopefully come through with them in the future. Is that Energy, they're just they have to be able to play when it matters, when they're nervous, and that's a skill that they hopefully will develop over time, because they choked really hard in that minor, really hard.
Right on. Well, with the more experience, they're probably gonna come into themselves more and hopefully see some life at this event. But I think the main storyline of this event right here, as it has been for the last several months, is who the hell can beat Astralis? Can anybody do it here? What do you guys think?
I mean, people can do it and have done it. I mean, Navi's done it a couple of times. Faze has done it a few times as well. So there are certainly teams out there that can, but it pretty much takes an informed Faze firing on all cylinders, or Navi having like electronic coming into form with Simple's playmaking ability alongside of it to give the shots a run for their money. And again, it happens pretty rarely. I mean, I was looking at the numbers the other day, and with this 5, Astralis has played at 8 LAN events. They've won 4 of the 8. They came second at another one. So 5 of the events they made the finals out of 8. And then they came top 4 2 other times. They've only fell outside of top 4 once. So that's just incredible. Their map pool is stacked. Their lineup is stacked with talent. Again, they rarely lose, and if they do, it takes kind of Herculean efforts. Even when they do lose, they tend to still only lose by like a couple of rounds, like 13-16 or 14-16 losses, or losing in double overtime or something like that. Like, you really have to grind out a win against this team if you want to be able to make something happen. So they are just clearly a front runner in every regard. And this is a tournament where you hope they can just kind of maybe work the rust off from the player break, just like everyone else is probably trying to do at this event to get ready for the major.
Yeah, I think that out of the teams, especially from the Masters, that could actually possibly give a Strauss run for their money. Obviously, you mentioned Navi and whatnot and Faze, but I think Mouse Sports is the closest team, I think, in the world to Astralis in terms of teamwork and firepower. I think a lot of teams like Faze and Navi are kind of lacking in the teamwork department and relying on big guns, like Simple and Electronic, literally carrying Navi in a lot of these situations. And I think Mouse Sports just have the overall, they seem like they have a team with the least amount of weak links. Like, I can't think of a weak link really in Mouse Sports anymore. Before, people would say it was Stico, but he played more of a support role, entry kind of information kind of player. But now I don't know. Like, they just, I feel like Mouse Sports is the next team, even with Snacks, to maybe take number 2 spot, maybe even upset Astralis in this tournament.
Yeah, I'd agree with you there. I mean, I was feeling pretty confident about Mouse Sports at the ELEAGUE Premier. I mean, I thought they were playing really well, beating teams. They unfortunately lost to Liquid, but they're playing super well. And Mouse Sports, they're a top 5 team, right? But like, they're sort of a wild card, and you don't know when they're going to come to event and underperform or overperform. And they weren't really able to pull it together at the ELEAGUE Premier, but I still think they looked really good. So over this player break, I think it's important. I mean, we'll find out, what the story is when we get to Stockholm next week, I think. But I want to direct this next question to dusT, because dusT, I've watched a lot of your stuff.
Sure.
I love it. I think you're super analytical and academic in the way you kind of look at Counter-Strike. So if you could pin anything, and I know you just talked quite a bit about Astralis, but what do you think makes them so good? And do you think they have any weaknesses? Like, where is a team going to be able to get in and kind of upset them and make them feel a little weak here?
Yeah, I mean, I think they're just like the perfect team for the era that we're in Counter-Strike right now. I mean, they're most complete. I mean, right now we're in an era where strategically you have to be able to do it all. Like, you can't get by just being like an execute-oriented team or just being like a loose team. Like, you have to have a well-functioning default. You have to be able to mid-round read and call from that default, and you have to be able to throw in pacing changes to keep people guessing. And I think Astralis is the epitome of being able to play disciplined Counter-Strike, but also be able to throw in gimmicks like these HE grenade stacks that they have. Also, I think their team play is just phenomenal. The way that they can move devices up around on the CT side, and everyone else can kind of fill in the gaps to make sure that there's no weakness left behind in the wake of devices movements, is something that not many other people can really right now in Counter-Strike. And I think Device is just a special kind of opper. Maybe he's not like the highest yielding fragger, but he has won 2 MVPs this year with this lineup. And so he is certainly still a strong player. And I think that adds like an element that some other teams don't have. And just the cap it all, because I think we could sit here and kind of, ride on Astralis all day because they're so good. But I think the other thing is just like, there's no weak link in fragging on this team. Like, Glaive is probably the strongest fragging IGL in Counter-Strike right now. And they've had 2 different people win MVPs at tournaments this year, and a couple of others who were in the running for MVPs at other tournaments. So yeah, I think that this Magisk move has made the roles work so well on this team. It was a blessing in disguise that KRB left, just because of how things work now.
Yeah.
I agree with that. Go ahead.
No, I'm saying, yeah, I totally agree. The team is super strong. Like the players individually are so strong, and even at the ELEAGUE Premier, I think HLTV marked 3 of their players out of the top 5 players that they thought were the most valuable at the event. And we have a graphic for that. We could bring it up, just kind of check out their numbers. But yeah, like you said, that's the wrong one, Tony. There you go. There you go. Yeah, so like super strong performances. You see above 1.8s against Liquid. I mean, those just seem like pretty unreal numbers.
Yeah, you look at the numbers, and it as dusT said, there's no weak link on the team. Sure, they don't have a simple or anything, but in a game of like Counter-Strike, it's all about teamwork. It's about working together. And the Astralis, they do it probably the best we've seen in a long time in terms of Counter-Strike, where their numbers all like that because they're playing spots that complement each other. They're baiting for each other. They're over-rotating and stuff like that. And these guys right now don't seem like they have a weakness, but if I were to put maybe something that's maybe weak in their game is sometimes they over-rotate a little too much. But other than that, like they're just too solid all around, and it's definitely, as dusT said, you got to grind it out against them. These guys are just so nuts, and it's really interesting. I hope teams will give them a challenge because I like to see good CS:GO, but it's kind of boring in a way if Astralis is winning everything. You got to have someone there to kind of light a fire or give them a challenge, a good game.
Definitely. So speaking of simple electronic, what do you guys think of Navi coming into this event? I mean, they were a team that were on the up and up prior to the player break. They won Cologne. They upset Astralis. That was huge. I don't think anyone was really expecting that. And before that, the Asia Championships and the Star Series ELEAGUE Season 5. So what do you guys think of Navi coming into this event after the player break? You think they got a good chance here?
Yeah, they're a really solid team. They have been for a fair time. Bringing Simple in originally, it started off slow, but now it's pretty strong. And now with Electronic and dusT sort of keeping it together, but even though they're still on the cusp, like they are a good team. It's just going to take a bit of time, when they eventually click into gear and become a constant top finishing team. Can they topple Astralis here? It's possible. They did it in Cologne. They could do it. They could do it again. It just depends on how it all falls down, because there are times when they will slip up. It happens a lot. But can they keep on that form?
Yeah, well, one thing with Navi though that I kind of don't like about them is how they rely on Simple and Electronic to do a lot of the heavy lifting,
Right.
getting the kills. And I think in a way, if they're on fire, yeah, they could be any team in the world. But if they're not on fire, if they're playing, an average game, it's going to rely on dusT to come up with, good strategies to really complement him and Edward to not, always be on the bottom, because if they're always on the bottom and then Simple Electronic aren't hitting their shots, a team like Navi can be in real trouble. And, even though we haven't seen that much lately, it's just if it happens in a tournament, they can't be an excuse, especially at the major. It's like, oh yeah, we lost because our top people didn't frag. That's a terrible excuse. So
Right.
what I want to see from Navi is maybe a different kind of playbook or something, because dusT is known for going super slow, war of attrition, baiting out nades. If you use more nades than we do, we have the advantage, that kind of idea. And I think that's an awesome play style. But if you play against teams that know that, you have to be able to change up the pace, change up the strategies a little bit. And so with the player break, I hope Navi and dusT have came up with some just a little different strategies that may surprise some teams like Astralis or a Faze.
Yeah, I mean, to kind of tag on to that, like one of the things I will credit Navi for lately is that they have been able to implement electronic better, and I think that's why you've seen people talk about him more. Like I think his numbers were always pretty good on Navi, but they weren't like the crazy numbers that he was having on flip side. But you've seen him really start to kind of step up his game. He's now almost just as valuable as Simple as far as impact he can have on a round these days. And I think a lot of it is because, particularly on Terrace sides, they've found ways to get him more involved. Like there's certain maps where he's actually like kind of part of the map control group instead of just kind of like sitting on the edge of the map, not really doing much. And even on maps like Overpass, for example, where he might be playing like outside of B, a spot that typically isn't, really impactful, I guess you could say. It's more of just like holding for rotations and watching for flanks and things like that. He actually can play it very aggressively and sometimes lead hits into B just off of individual efforts. So I think the fact that they've been able to find a way to kind of tap into electronic skill set more, get him more involved in the early parts of rounds, has really helped them out. They're not just relying on Simple making a crazy play or something to open around. They can now trust an electronic to be able to guide them through something. And also to their credit, I think the Bears is right to say that Zeus has this kind of, classic or traditional view of kind of playing like the war of attrition style, the slower pace style. But I definitely have seen this team have a little bit more capability to change the pace than maybe Zeus's teams in the past have had. And it may just be because of the players he has, like people like Simple Electronic who want to be aggressive. And that might be kind of forcing his hand to create faster plays. But whatever the case may be, they are a little bit more diverse than maybe classic Zeus teams have been. And I think that that's helped out a lot. I do think that long term, though, they could run into some trouble because I don't know that you can have two people on your team that can't really frag very well. Edwards actually had a couple of good events, which has helped them out a lot, actually. But I don't know. I feel like at some point down the road, if they want to truly be like the best team in the world, they might be one move away from doing that.
Yeah, I think even though Edward gets a lot of hate and people call him botward and all that stuff, but he plays a lot of those roles where he's listening for rotations, he's playing that lurker role, and those kind of roles, sometimes you have to make the move. You have to maybe poke here, try to get a shot, try to get a kill, and I mean, if Edward's more top of his game, I'd see a little spike in his numbers, but it shouldn't be that much because just with his positioning is it's good for the team but bad for himself in a way. And so a lot of people don't understand that, and he just gets a lot of hate for it. He needs to maybe, I don't know, play more deathmatch or something. I don't know. I mean, they're winning, so it's not like he's doing something wrong.
I think they just need like a stronger entry fragger is what I think happens, because you have Zeus kind of playing support, and Electronic can usually play like peripheral roles, but he can kind of be aggressive on the edge like other, I guess, lurker playmakers like a Shox or like what Aniko has been in the past. Electronic kind of reminds me of those types of peripheral players that are more active, not lurkers. But I feel like if you had like a really strong entry for Flamey to follow up on, or for Electronic to follow up on, like an Adren or something like that, I think this team would have like even better solidified roles with better fragging in the entry role department. Because I feel like on a lot of maps, Edward can kind of be like an entry, like on an Overpass or a Mirage. And I think that if you had a stronger fragger in some of those positions, they might do a little bit better. But like you said, they're already doing quite well. Like if you look at their past results, they look quite good. So you may not need to do anything yet. I'm just saying, like, if we get to a point in time in Counter-Strike months from now where like Astralis just can't get dethroned for whatever reason, Faze doesn't figure things out with Olaf's return and they can't seem to get back in form, if we're ever going to dethrone Astralis, I think Navi with one roster move is probably the best chance to do it, because for right now it seems like Liquid has some weird mental block against Astralis. So while they have the team that could do it talent-wise, doesn't seem to be happening. I think Navi with a different fifth is like the best chance you have at doing it consistently.
Who could that fifth be though? Because there's not really
I think Adren would be the best if you could get him.
Yeah,
that or
can you
get
get
Angel for Zeus. Like there's moves you could make, but I don't know how feasible they are with like contract restrictions and buyouts and all of that stuff. Hell, even going after like a young player from like Avangar or something might even be an option. I don't know.
I don't hope. Hopefully, they don't make a similar mistake to a team like MIBR, who picks someone that can't even speak the same language as the whole team, and That's why you probably see such bumps in the road for MIBR at the shaky start with the Tarek and Stewie 2K. Is now you have to have them speak English for the entire matches, and it's yeah, they probably know English on a okay level, but it's that split second of delayed, could cost you a round or a kill or something like that.
That just seemed like such a weird move to me. I mean, they just rebranded to Made in Brazil, and then they had, what was it, like a
I didn't
month
think that
later,
one
bring
through.
in the two NA players.
Yeah, a lot of interesting forums and posts and comments about the MIBR thing and why they did it. I I don't know. I think because Stewie has like a pretty big fan base in USA, and as much as MIBR probably wants to be, a really good team, I think branding may be just in Noah's mind, just a little above how well the CS will do, because you got people like Tarek, big streamer, Stewie 2K, big streamer. I mean, you got the two top American streamers for CS:GO on one team, and on top of all the other players in the team are super popular as well. And so, I guess is long term, it's more of a business move than an actual amazing CS:GO team.
Yeah, it doesn't really seem too good for the squad overall, does it though, right?
I mean, they are still good players. It's not like they're terrible, and we think, oh, they're not winning tournaments. They have to be bad. They're. I mean, you could still consider them top 10 in the world, top
Right.
15 at at the very least, and that's still pretty effing good.
Yeah.
For and just in general, like top 15 is not easy to do. You look at a lot of these main teams, a lot of these premier teams, they can't even hold around against some of these professional teams, and so it's, I mean, we're a little harsh because they're not winning, number one, but they're still a pretty solid team. And as soon as they figure out communication problems or start feeling the flow of the teamwork, I think that they can bump up to a top 5 team in like 2-3 months.
Yeah, I mean, this is a new configuration for them, so it's I feel like it's natural to see them kind of struggle in the beginning. But
Yeah.
I don't know, would you guys trade like the firepower of Stewie and Tarek versus like having some real like chemistry within the team? Like, what do you think? Like, what's going to be more important? Is it just a matter of them kind of settling in?
I mean, the chemistry
go ahead.
takes time, whoever it is, they're like pretty much all of the Brazilian players can speak English in that team anyway. It's not as if they're getting like a load of young Brazilian players from a team like Sharks or whatever, and then throwing an American in there. These are seasoned professionals who know the language because they've been here for a few years. It will just take a time for them to adapt to calling in it in the CS.
No, definitely.
I mean, I think it's just a tough spot because like any feasible Brazilian candidate to come in for this team, a lot of them have either already burnt bridges with this team at some point on like a social level, or just haven't performed well enough to be considered a better overall player than like a Stewie or a Tarek. If you're throwing language and culture out of the way and you're just focused on how good is this individual as a player, how skilled is he, can he add something to our team? They already tried it with Phelps, and for whatever reason, they didn't feel like that was going to work out long term. I think this would be a perfect situation to bring Phelps back, but fair enough if they didn't think that was the right call. You've already had Bolts in. I don't know why he doesn't work on this team but works anywhere else he plays at, but whatever the case may be, it didn't happen for him here. He's the one that just left, so obviously he's not the option. And then what do you do after that? I mean, KNG's already shit the bed on ever really being seriously considered for a team like this. You've already had FNX obviously burn bridges with this team, or burn bridges with Fallen personally at least twice now in CS:GO. And now he's like off in no man's land at this point with that whole NTC news that came out. So it's just like, who are you going to go get? I mean, don't get me wrong. Like maybe the twins, Lucas and Henny are options at some point. I guess I know that they were interested in Lucas at some point, but it would take like a more drastic change to bring both of them in at the same time. Granted, they made 2 roster moves, so I guess you could have made an argument for Lucas and Henny, but I'm not sure if that would have fit like role wise and all that good stuff. And then outside of that, I mean, yeah, there's like a couple of like really like young new players from like Furia and Sharks in the Brazilian scene that you could look at. I know that they were talking about like TRK from Team One as well as being like a young Brazilian to keep an eye on. But, you know, maybe they just don't feel that those guys are ready yet because they clearly don't have the same level of experience as people like Stewie and Tarek who have played at the top of Counter-Strike for a couple of years now. So I can see it from that perspective. You know, these guys play with each other all the time in FPL and scrims and stuff like that. So they know each other. They've rubbed shoulders with one another. They know what they're getting. And I think to kind of go to the Bears, you know, talking about how, you know, they're still a decent team. I mean, look, guys, we know that this team is struggling, but go look at who they get eliminated by in these tournaments. It's like Astralis or Navi or Faze. It's not like they're losing to nobodies when they lose in these tournaments. I think Mouse Sports eliminated them from one tournament recently as well. So pretty much all their tournament eliminations come to top 5 teams in the world. It's not like they're losing to slouches. And that even goes back to before Tarek joined the team, like just when Stewie kind of first joined when they were still SK. You know, it hasn't been as bad as people make it out to be. It's just in the context of how good they used to be, this looks really bad. But I think that there is, you know, room for them to possibly climb back.
Yeah, I think with MIBR, one of the to ride on that kind of thing is that one thing I noticed is that I think they have to change some stuff up. It feels like that they're trying to find that, you know, 2016, you know, when they won majors and whatnot. And like, for example, Taco left the team to put Stewie in and Cash. Okay, Taco would always go squeaky door and Cash. You know, he's there to pull people from middle, to distract an A, to bait utility. You know, whatever his job is to be like the annoying fly that you're just trying to stop it. Taco, go away. But the problem is they put Stewie in that exact same role where he's trying to do the same thing. And I know Stewie can do that. You know, watching his, you know, his S pugs and whatnot, and but you know, you can't completely do that. You can't just put player X and player Y and expect the same results. You know, you got to kind of play off their strengths and weaknesses. And I think that's probably one of the reasons why Stewie TK looks like on paper he's struggling a little bit, because he's literally just inserted in some of these maps in Taco role where he's just information, he's bait, he's eyes and ears, which can work, but you know, people know that of SK. They know that of MIBR or whatever, that, you know, they've been playing this kind of style for the last 2 years. And so maybe Fallen has to kind of go to the drawing board and maybe try looking strats at a different angle, maybe try to rework some of it. You know, don't restructure your entire game or anything, but, you know, maybe add a different game plan to where Stewie isn't maybe just sitting back and watching Squeaky Door and Cash or something. You know, that's just one example. I'm not saying he's like that in every map, but especially in Cash, I noticed that, you know, as well, that he's just literally inserting Taco roll and here, have fun.
I mean, you're right. I mean, the problem is this team has 3 entry riflers and Fallen, who's known to be a more assertive opper when he's been like in his prime. So when you have that many aggressors on your team, it's really hard to make slower defaults work because someone has to take an L. Like someone has to take a back seat and do something they maybe don't want to do. I feel like this team, though, when you do like explosive executes, because you have so many entry riflers, you're a dangerous team to try to contain when you go for a fast-paced play. So I think maybe mixing in more of that would probably be something kind of like the old Optic, right? When they were doing so well, like at the end of 2016, guys like Tarek were a part of that team, by the way, and they were known for being able to do that because they had like Rush, Tarek, Mixwell, like they could just swarm and trade bomb sites really fast, and something that Cloud9 tried to do as well whenever they had like Tarek, Stewie, Rush, and Automatic. So maybe that's something they can look at, but in reality, you know, time will tell, right? That's kind of where I'm at. I mean, Duck, what do you think? Do you think this team can do it? Can they come back?
Maybe. Maybe. It's possible. They just need to, like I said earlier, they need to gel. They need to learn their tactics. They need to make sure they can all play in certain roles. With YNK now on board, you know, that's possible.
What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting move. Infer on what interesting means as you will, but I could see it working. You know, he's a very clever CS. He's got a very clever CS mind. You could tell that back when he was observing. You could tell that when he's actually an analyst on a desk. So you're like transitioning into this coach role. I could quite see him easily developing new strategies, working with Fallen, to get them to be a better team. It's just there's just things in that team just aren't clicking yet, and there needs something in there. Whether it is getting rid of one of the Americans, whether it is just having YNK sit them in a room and pointing out things they're doing wrong, it will take a bit of time.
Yeah,
How
take a
much
lot
time
of
they
time
have
and
is a good question. Yeah.
a lot of egos that have to be checked, Because if you're successful doing this for a year and now all of a sudden it doesn't work, do you keep doing it?
Yeah.
Do you change it up a little bit? Do you completely change it up? I think that's the struggle that MIBR is having. They're trying to find that glory. So maybe they're going down the wrong path. I don't know.
Hell, there's like rumors of Codzera wanting to leave after the major, so who the hell knows what's going on that team anyway?
It's a huge loss.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm looking forward to seeing him in Stockholm. Like, we're coming off the player break. They got YNK. It's true. Like, if they put the practice in, like, they could show up to this event. Like, no one really knows. Like, like I said, it's a brand new team, new configuration. And dusT, like you said, like, they're losing to world-class teams, like cream of the crop. So it's not really like they're, completely screwing up. Like,
right.
Yeah.
I guess the only point is like they want to be a world-class team. So if you want to be a world-class team, you have to be able to beat world-class opponents. And that's what they're struggling to do right now. Like, they have no problem like staying towards the bottom of the top 10 of the world. Like, they're kind of gatekeepers in that regard. Like, you still have to be a really sick team to be able to topple them over. But if they ever want to gain ground, I mean, guys, this is a team that like won 2 majors, or the core at least, and like used to be considered the de facto #1 team in the world for like a year. And have always really been kind of like sitting in top 4 of the world for a long time. Ever since they start hitting their stride, like in, like mid 2016 and kind of, riding that through. So, and actually even dating back before that, like really late, like that last event they played in 2015 when they first brought FNX and Taco, and they took that second place at, God, what was that? It was like a Dreamhack Faceit event, like a combined event or something. That was where they like lost to Fnatic 016, and then they like came all the way back and made the final. So from that point forward, they were right in the top 4 for a long time. So to get them back to that point, like, it's all about context. For any other team, losing to Faze and Astralis and like making top 8 finishes, or 5th, 6th place would be, oh, that's pretty good. But for this core, it's not good enough for what they've proven they can attain.
Right. It's probably super frustrating for them.
Oh, I'm sure.
In that position.
Yeah. And it's even in this Dreamhack Masters, they don't have the easiest of teams to get past. I mean, you have Mouse Sports, I consider top 3 in the world. Hellraisers, who have been up and up ever since Woxic has joined. And even though he didn't play in the last tournament, they still did okay. I don't think they did that bad, but obviously Woxic is a huge part of their success in the last 6 months. And then you got Gambit, who, since the major win, Zeus leaving, they've been kind of a disappointment, but they can beat some good teams. And so in a best of 1 kind of matchups, you just never know what's going to happen. And I'm assuming these are all best of 1 in round robin. Well, if it's best of 1, I think they have
I think opening matches
GSL
are best of 1, and then it
GSL?
switches to best of 3, right?
Yeah, it's like the standard kind of like GSL.
Okay.
Group stage.
So I mean,
except I'm pretty sure the only match that's the best of 1 is the opening game.
Yeah, that's
and
correct.
then all the rest are best of 3.
Okay. Well, with that being said, in best of 1, Gambit does have a potential to upset MIBR, because MIBR is notoriously known.
Dust
challenging
that.
Known.
Flags coming out.
I mean,
dude, they lost to Boot
saying,
Dreamscape in a best of 1.
Listen.
Dude,
I'm not. I said that they're a disappointment and they lose games, but in best of 1 settings, it's a little random. And MIBR is known for losing their first game in best of 3 sets. They lose a lot in their first game.
Bro,
and then
can I just run you down?
Theory. Bears has got theory. Let's hear it.
Okay, They got eliminated by Wendigo with 2 standings at the Zotac EU tournament. They came dead last at Cologne. Granted, they lost to Mouse Sports and Navi, so that's not that bad. They lost to Imperial at DreamHack Summer, and they lost maps to Boot Dreamscape at Shanghai. So they did event, and then they got blasted by Energy. It wasn't even competitive when they played them in the semifinals.
But before that, they beat Big. They beat
Okay.
North. They beat Hellraisers. So I mean, some of these maybe teams in
Okay,
CS
name a
have
top
a
10
better
team they've
advantage.
beat.
Well, they haven't
I
beat
guess
anyone
North technically
recently.
would be
I'm
a
just
top
saying in
10
the last
team.
2 months they've been on bad, but I'm saying they have potential to upset some of these teams, especially in the best of one. It's, it's a little random, just like Gambit in the major. You didn't expect them to win the major, but guess what? They won the major.
They lost 0-2 to Wendigo at LAN.
I mean,
I'm gonna throw that one back out there.
Right? They could lose to some really bad teams, but is it going to be the good Gambit or bad Gambit that day? You just don't know.
I mean,
Yeah,
No one
will
knows.
give you
Moot
this.
point anyway.
Gambit does have talent. Like, I will say that.
Yeah.
Like, Adrin and Hobbit are world-class players when they're on form. And Mo is, I think, sometimes underrated as an AWP player. I think he's actually pretty good. So they have the talent. They just struggle with leadership a lot, more than almost any other team in the world. Like, they have played in-game leader musical chairs for, like, ever. I think every person on that team's been an in-game leader except for Mo the last like 6 months or something like that. And while they brought Blade in to coach, and he hasn't had a whole lot of time with them just yet, so maybe like with more time with Blade coaching, they might get better at this. But still, coaches are restricted nowadays on what they can do. And I think this is the team that will benefit most from being able to have an in-game leader coach of some sort, I feel like. So yeah, I mean, they have a couple of things going for them, but the results haven't been there. And so to go back to like the original point here about MIBR and their chances making it out of groups, I mean, they better make it out of this group. If they can't, like, that's pretty disappointing, especially because they're going to have like a warm-up event at Zotac right before Stockholm. So they have a chance to kind of like play some official matches after the boot camp that they've done, work things out. Maybe it makes a couple of adjustments before they go into Stockholm. And you know, the only team in their group that should be like a huge problem for them would be Mouse Sports. But even then, they just picked up Snacks and they like did well at Premier, but bombed the event before that. So they're not even in full form right now. And I mean, Hellraisers is a dangerous team, though. I will say that. Like, that's the one team that might be able to get one over in MIBR if like Issa and Woxic are on form, and like MIBR is you know, still kind of shaky. Go ahead.
So guess which of those is the first game Mib is playing? MIBS playing.
Who?
Hellraisers.
Hellraisers?
So
that's a tricky one. And the best one that is going to be tricky.
So,
I agree.
So good luck to them.
Right,
Very
interesting.
I think
I wanna
Mibber
see,
should survive the group. In all honesty, like
should.
I
I
think
don't
it
know.
should be
They
Mouse and
have done
Mibber,
a
but
lot of
like
things in the past too. But
Yeah, I think that they could fall to Hellraisers in the best of one, but if they get a rematch against them in a best of three later, as long as like things go well at Zotac and their boot camp went really well and they figured out some stuff, I think that they should be like second behind Mouse Sports coming out of this group. But I think Hellraisers has a good chance to upset them. I don't rate Gambit though. I don't think they're going to do anything in this group. But yeah, I think it's going to be a fight between MIBR and Hellraisers for that second seed, and a good one.
Yeah,
for sure. Well, one team I mean, dusT mentioned them earlier, but we haven't really gone into depth about them. Is Faze Clan. Like, they're coming in here. This is their, like, realistically their last shot at the Intel Grand Slam. So what are we thinking about them? I mean, they got Olaf back in the mix. Like, here you got the graphic right here showing the Intel Grand Slam. They got Olaf back in the mix. He was at Premier. It didn't even seem like he was confirmed for the ELEAGUE Premier until, like, a couple days before. Like, it was sort of like, is he going to be there? Is he not? And then he showed up and he performed like kind of well. But now that we've got Olaf in, he played at the ELEAGUE Premier, and now we have like a player break. There's time for him to play and practice and get kind of back into form. No one really knows why he was absent in the first place. But what do you guys think? Like, do you think Faze has a chance here?
So Olaf, he's been playing well, but at what cost? Like, Faze lost to some teams that they usually didn't lose to before, like Big and then Mouse Sports, just recently in the ELEAGUE, and also to Fnatic. They lost 2-0 to Fnatic. So Olaf's back. He's doing good skill-wise and number-wise, but the team has been losing uh, series and matches or the cost of it. And one thing about Faze is that they're kind of like NRG in terms of they do well when there's no like nothing on the line. I mean, yeah, they'll have some pretty good matches under pressure and stuff, but in finals, a lot of times they're just non-existent. They just completely fall off. It's hit or miss. So I'm kind of curious, like, what their mental state. What does Kerrigan bring to the team? Because when he was on Team Secret and old TSM, they almost kind of had similar tendencies where they kind of just choke in big matches. I'm kind of curious if it's the play style, maybe it's Kerrigan in general, or what kind of a mindset that that team has coming into high pressure situations.
I'm in a situation where it's a little hard for me to read Faze because obviously they've been playing with stand-ins a lot. Like, they had Exist standing in,
Right.
Roman standing in. By the
They did
way,
well.
still making finals with stand-ins. Like, worth pointing that out. Beat Astralis with one at
Right.
IAM Sydney. So they still did a hell of a lot for not having a full 5 for several events in a row. So I think that they deserve a lot of credit for being able to do that. And yeah, they did bomb out of Premier on a lost return, but I mean, they lost to Fnatic in OT and then 16-14. It's not like they got smashed. Like, they were very competitive in that series. So I'm not going to sit there and harm them too much on that. And it's the first event back for Olaf, and he actually played quite well. It was actually Rain who really struggled at this ELEAGUE Premier tournament. But I mean, the bottom line is you can never count Faze out because of how much talent they have and the fact that they've repeatedly proven that they can be one of the best teams in the world, despite whatever adversity they might be going through with their lineup or what have you. I mean, they're the only team outside of Navi who's ever really been able to beat Astralis in best of 3 series and like beat them in finals, like they did at Sydney or some of these other events, like they did at Katowice in a best of 3. So I think that. I think the front runners for this event are certainly Astralis and Navi based on recent results, but I think that like Faze is certainly probably next in line to be considered a team to be, a threat to make a deep run for sure. Like, this is not woe is Faze. Like, they had one bad event. Okay.
Right.
That's it. Like, they've only placed outside of the top 4 like twice in the recent past. So
Yeah.
It's true.
They were playing well with the stand-ins with Chrome and Exist. I mean, it was almost like yeah, they weren't winning all of their events, but they were placing well and doing well, and it was almost like, do we really want Olaf back? Like, you know what I mean? It started to feel like that way because it had been so long since we've had him. And like, yeah, obviously we want
hate when
Olaf
people
back.
do that though. That's like the same shit that happened whenever like Dennis stood in for Astralis and people were like, "Do we really want Device back?" Of course you want Device back. Like, that's like the most unreal thing I've ever heard.
But you can't help but think it.
But that's a little different though, because Faze has been missing Olaf for how long? At least 6 months. I don't know. It feels like it's over 6 months. He's hardly playing. But Faze with Device, what is it, like a couple events maybe, like a month at most? So it's like a longer period of time.
Good bit.
Is it longer than?
Device was out for about 3 months, I think.
3 months, really? 3 months,
more or less. About 3 months at most, anyway.
Well, 3 months is a long time, but 6+ months with Olaf is just
because they had Sonic stand in a couple of times as well for him.
He did.
Yeah,
he played an event, I'm pretty sure.
He's had a couple of different
like, he's been kind of like he's been not playing with them for such a long time, and with Chrome, and he did so well. He did amazingly well, especially for being a stand-in. I'm just curious, like Faze, what is their commitment to Olaf? Yeah, Olaf was one of the best in the world at one point, but that's a couple years ago, and he hasn't been the same since. And so you had a potential that can play well in high pressure final situations like Chroman, and you're thinking, well, Olaf, he's a big name, he's a huge player, but is this good for the team? Is this better for the team? I guess we'll find out.
I mean, I don't know. Like, it's hard to say because he did play so well individually at the ELEAGUE Premier. Like, it's not like he came in rusty, was like a burden on the team fragging wise, or something that's like very obvious that like, okay, like maybe this return is going to take a while for him to, get back into shape. It looked like he already was in shape. Like I said, it seemed like other players were struggling. Like, I think Rain was the one who struggled the most
in
this particular tournament. And again, their losses were really close. So imagine if Rain was online that tournament. You're only losing games by like 2 or 3 rounds. Like, that could have made the world of difference for them to make a deeper run at ELEAGUE Premier. And again, I must stress, like, recency bias might be taking hold of you that they did bad at ELEAGUE Premier, but look at the rest of their tournament play for the entirety of this year. And they've played like 10 or more LAN events and only placed outside top 4 twice. I mean, that's a pretty damn good win rate to make like semifinals. So I think that this team is still certainly going to be able to at least make semifinals at this event. Like, unless they get some crazy draw against like Astralis or Navi in the quarterfinals somehow.
I mean, we're talking about that, but Optic. I mean, Heroic. I don't know anything about Heroic, to be honest, with their new lineup and everything, but or
Right.
newer.
Playing first against Faze.
They haven't been doing too amazing, but Optic, they've been actually kind of on the rise too, so we can't completely count them out. I mean, we talk about, at first when I looked at all these teams, I saw at least 2 teams easily, but now after talking about it, after thinking about it, I don't know, like Optic can have potential to upset maybe some of these teams like Faze or a Fnatic, and they could be the number 2 team to sneak out of this group. It's tough. I don't know. It's going to be a tough tournament. I think this is going to be one of the toughest of the year, other than the major.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, they're in that group with Faze, Fnatic, and Heroic, and yeah, I'd agree with you, Bears. I think they do have a little room to kind of sneak in there. What about Fnatic though? We haven't really talked about them a lot, and they've kind of been like almost like lurking in the shadows the last like couple months. Like we haven't seen them do a lot of really big things. What do you think they need to kind of to step up and get better in place, start placing?
Start playing well. Just being honest, like they've since the start of the year they've not been good.
Right.
Like they had IEM Katowice, which they won, fair enough, and then they followed with WESG, which isn't that great. And since then, nothing. You know, like
It's
They're
not been that
happening.
bad though, right? Like at Premier, they beat Faze and they lost to like Mouse Sports in the best 3 that went all 3 maps, and one of their losses was 14-16. Cologne, they got knocked out by Navi and Faze, and they beat like North and Big. I mean, like you said, they won Katowice early this year. They won WESG. They've been going through a bunch of roster changes, so it's not as if things have been stable for them lately. They just now solidified a 5 with like Draken on board, and Exist has only been on the team for a few months. So I mean, 2 roster changes out of 5 players is quite a lot, especially when it's an in-game leader swap. I think they have the talent. Like Crims has been insane for most of this year. Since Draken joined, he's been nuts for Fnatic. Draken's been so good on this Fnatic team the last couple of tournaments they've played. So I actually think that Fnatic, you probably have to consider him like the 2nd seed out of Group C under Faze. Like Optic has upset potential. I would agree with the Bears on that one. I think Optic's like kind of an interesting potential dark horse candidate to have a good run. But I think you have to go into this tournament from an eye test perspective, thinking that Fnatic is like a pretty solid 2nd seed out of Group C.
Yeah, I agree so too, and it's going to definitely come down to Exist, just trying to fit in with his strategies and whatnot, and hopefully he gets more than 5 kills a map. I think if he gets at least 8 or 10, I think they're good. But if he plays normal Exist, where he's too much of an in-game leader and not a player, then I think Fnatic's going to have a little bit of a problem, trying to get out of that, or even if they do get out late in the tournament, they might see a little problem in that, because it's just too hard to play 4 and 5 in a lot of situations. And I know Exist in-game leader, your frags are definitely going to hinder a little bit, but there are ways to prepare your team where you're not completely controlling and thinking about every single move all the time, and you have to find that balance to where let your teammates go. It's like being daddy.
Well, I feel like Exist is the
let him go.
the
let him go and have fun,
quintessential loose collar, right?
Yeah.
So I think he isn't the guy that's going to be so grinded down on like micromanaging and like intricate tactics that he'll be pulled away from being an individual. I think he's always been known as like a looser type of collar, which is I think why maybe Draken's succeeding in this team, is giving him that room to go for picks and be like that wild card. But yeah,
Better hit the DMs then more.
Just jump
I'm
in
saying.
those. So
Just jump in, be
Fnatic is
confident.
going up against Optic first on the 29th.
that's an interesting matchup for sure. I
Yeah,
don't.
Optic,
That's
yeah.
actually a tough one to call.
Yeah, I saw
Especially the
Optic
festival,
at
yeah.
the Asian Minor. I saw them play and stuff, and they started off really good, like really well. They're just destroying teams, but then they kind of slipped up, and um, they would be up a lot of points, and then all of a sudden like lose out the game somehow. So they have a momentum problem with the team, but I seen them just destroy stuff. So I think they do have potential to beat some teams, um, and then again, it was against weaker teams in that tournament. But you know what? Regardless, I think they still have a lot of potential to be a dark
Yeah.
horse.
All right, so we're going to pull up the groups real fast and just give a quick overview of the teams playing. So let's get that up on screen. And what are you guys thinking from the top? Duck, let's hear you. Who's surviving Group A, B, C, and D? What do you think?
Ooh, so out of Group A, Astralis, obviously. I'm gonna go out there and win him and say Tyloo coming second. You know,
Okay.
Ooh.
Just thinking the same thing.
Ooh, I like that.
there's a bit of left field there, just because I don't think North is that strong. To be
What
honest.
about what if
Group
dusT? What if
B?
you guys all? What if we jump in on the groups, like each? Like
Yeah.
what do you think, dusT, for Group A?
I actually am going to agree with Duck here. Definitely Astralis first seed, but yeah, I think North's in a really weird spot with like Nico kind of coming in potentially temporarily, not really having a primary AWP anymore. I think there might be some role conflicts between Nico and Kierby on what they do on their respective teams in the past. So I think that they are in like a really weird situation right now, and this will be their first event with Nico. So I think Tyloo actually has some big upset potential. North's probably the favorite, but I'm actually going to gamble on Tyloo just like Duck is.
And I'm gonna go with Astralis being number one, and then North being number two, because
Okay.
Tyloo, the potential, they're a good team, but they really lack in the best of three series. They tend to just kind of fall out, and they're a very heavy momentum team. So I think I just don't think that they'll be able to get that run and get out of against the teams in Group A. Sorry, Greyhound, my friends. No shoey for you this time.
Yeah, no, I'm with you guys on that. First seed Astralis, definitely. Then Tyloo. I'm thinking the same thing. What about B? For me, I'm saying Navi, and not just because DeBears is in here, but I want to say NRG is gonna pull through on this one. What do you guys think?
Oh yeah, I think this is like pretty clear Navi energy for me. Nip has like an outsider's chance, I suppose, but not expecting too much outside of a Navi energy group.
Is everyone on board
Yeah,
with that?
I
Pretty
do.
much, Navi.
Pretty much agree with that, yeah. Navi Energy. I mean,
Navi Energy
Nip,
as well.
Yeah. Ghost have no hope, being bluntly honest. Energy
Just
and
hopeless.
Nip have to. Yeah, I mean, they're, they're not on the same level
Ghost
as the
have
other teams in that
potential.
group, really.
No.
I think Ghost can take a map or two. I think if they play really well, they
Possibly.
maybe beat a Nip, but I think that's about it. I don't think they'll be able to beat Navi or Energy in the best of three.
I wouldn't say it's like the most equal skill level, but I think it's gonna be the most like maybe like the tightest running. I mean, it like Navi and Energy
Yeah.
should pull through, but like it should be an interesting group nonetheless.
Yeah, Energy is sometimes a wild card in terms in those situations, but they've been pretty consistent in the last 4 or 5 months. So I think they can do well.
Yeah. In Group C, Faze first seed, then Fnatic for me. Optic, as you said, Bears. I think they have a shot to kind of wiggle in there and maybe steal a second seed. But for me, Faze number one, then Fnatic.
You know what? I'll go with the wild card here. I'm gonna do Faze and Optic. I'm just gonna throw Optic in there. Fnatic, I think they have a pretty good chance, but you gotta make it a little interesting. So let's see Optic pull it out, eh?
Okay.
I'm gonna go with Faze and Fnatic, but I do think Optic has a chance to sneak in. I think they'll make it all the way to like the last best of 3 and like have a close series with Fnatic.
Okay, Optic going the stretch. Duck, are you on board with that?
I'm going Faze and then just completely differently. Heroic.
No
Um,
way.
I mean, it's not as if they're a bad team. Like, you know, it's not as if like they're the greyhound of their group. They're a good team. Like, head to head against Optic, they have a chance. Whether or not they can, and occasionally they can be consistent enough to potentially beat Fnatic. It's whether or not they're going to be at that level of form coming into Stockholm. It depends, but I can quite easily see Heroic going through Group C.
Okay,
Yeah.
I respect
I
that.
gotta respect it. I respect the gamble. I respect the gamble.
Yeah, man. I can get down with that. And then Group D, for me, I'm saying Mouse Sports, and I want to see Mibber. I'm gonna say they're taking second seed, but definitely with like possibility for Hellraisers to. I mean, definitely possibilities for them to steal that second seed.
Yeah, I think
I'm in
Sports
full
for
agreement
sure
with
is
that.
winning one. I think Mouse Sports won. And then even though my head says Hellraisers, my heart's gonna say MIBR. You know, I gotta root for the 2 Americans and 3 Brazilians. So I gotta say hopefully this is their bust out tournament that they'll be able to go really, really deep and hopefully make a finals run. So MIBR, don't let me down.
Nah, I'm more comfortably pumped for Mouse and Hellraisers there. Just surely because of maybe MIBR's current form before the player break, and Hellraisers looking fairly alright. I'd much rather say Hellraisers and Mouse, not in that order.
With Gambit maybe stealing a best of 1
Nah.
somewhere.
Gambit, sneak one in.
Taking the Gambit. All right, guys, that's going to do it for this episode of The Reload. Dreamhack Masters Stockholm, August 29th to September 2nd. Duck, to Bears, dusT, thank you guys so much for hopping on. It's been awesome to have you guys on here. And we'll be in touch and maybe come back and look at the Masters later in the event next time.
You just never know. Thank you.
For sure. All right, thanks guys. And that'll do it for this episode of The Reload. Thank you guys for tuning in. Huge shout out to dusT, the Bears, and Duck for coming on and talking some CS with me. They were a blast to have, and we have an awesome week of Counter-Strike ahead of us. August 29th to September 2nd is the Dreamhack Masters Stockholm, 250K prize pool and part of the Intel Grand Slam, with Faze having that opportunity to go ahead and secure that $1 million prize pool. So there's a lot of exciting storylines to watch out for. Definitely follow The Reload on Twitter at TheReloadFM. And also huge shout out to UGC Events for throwing on this awesome production and backing The Reload and just being there to support us 100%. Thank you guys for tuning in. I'm Cody Luongo, and I will see you next week.